measured, precise, empathetic, but unflinching. A psychologist who respects the subject while being completely honest, never mocking, never cold. He opens the door for everyone. He remembers your birthday, checks in when you're struggling, and never says no when you need help. He is patient when others are short, generous when others are selfish, and available when everyone else is busy. On the surface, he's the best kind of person, the one you always wish there were more of. But underneath that smile, something else is happening. Underneath the warmth and the selflessness and the endless accommodation, there is a ledger. And on that ledger, every favor has been quietly recorded, every sacrifice silently noted, every act of kindness carrying a weight he would never admit out loud, the unspoken expectation that all of it will eventually be returned. He doesn't think of himself as manipulative. He genuinely believes he is just a good person. That is the most important thing to understand about the nice guy. He is not a villain, and he is not pretending. He is a man who was shaped by deep psychological wounds into a pattern of behavior that looks like generosity, but functions like a trap, one that eventually harms everyone it touches, including and especially himself. Today, Psychlon examines the psychology beneath the niceness, the architecture of a personality built on approval, and the painful truth about what it costs to be the person who is always, unconditionally, endlessly nice. 1. The wound that built him. The nice guy is not born, he is made, and he is almost always made in childhood. Somewhere in his early years, he received a clear and powerful message that love, approval, and safety are not given freely, they are earned. Perhaps his parents were emotionally inconsistent, warm when he performed and distant when he didn't. Perhaps he grew up in a home where conflict was dangerous, where expressing anger or need led to punishment or withdrawal. Perhaps he was simply surrounded by people whose approval felt conditional, and he was small and frightened enough to decide that the safest strategy was to become whatever those people needed him to be. Psychologist Robert Glover, who dedicated an entire book to this pattern, describes it as the result of covert socialization, the process by which a boy learns that his authentic self, with all its needs and anger and inconvenience, is unacceptable, and that only a carefully managed, agreeable, selfless version of himself will be loved. Over time, that managed version becomes the only version he knows how to show the world. The original self, messy, needy, sometimes angry, entirely human, gets buried so deep that even he forgets it's there. The nice guy's niceness is not a character trait. It is a survival strategy that outlived its original purpose and is now running his entire life. 2. The covert contract. Here is the central psychological mechanism of the nice guy, the thing that separates his behavior from genuine kindness, the covert contract. A covert contract is an unspoken agreement that he makes entirely in his own head without the other person's knowledge or consent that states, if I am nice enough, helpful enough, selfless enough, then you will give me what I need in return. The contract is never stated, it is never negotiated, the other person has no idea it exists, but the nice guy holds it as sacred, and when it is inevitably broken, when the person he has been endlessly accommodating does not respond with the love, respect, or reciprocity he silently expected, what emerges from beneath the niceness is something that surprises everyone, including him: resentment. A bitterness disproportionate to the apparent cause, because the cause everyone can see is never the real cause. The real cause is the contract they never agreed to. This is why the nice guy's relationships follow such a recognizable pattern: excessive giving, followed by growing resentment, followed by either an explosion that seems to come from nowhere or a cold withdrawal that equally baffles the people around him. He is not reacting to what just happened. He is reacting to the accumulated weight of every covert contract that was never honored, every unspoken expectation that went unmet, every act of giving that turned out to cost far more than the receiver ever knew. 3. Approval addiction.
At the core of nice guy psychology is something that functions neurologically like an addiction, the need for approval. Not the ordinary human desire to be liked, which is universal and healthy, but a compulsive, anxiety-driven dependency on the positive regard of others, a need so deep that its absence produces something that feels genuinely dangerous. Rejection for the nice guy is not disappointing, it is destabilizing, threatening the very foundation of his sense of self. So he says yes when he means no. He agrees when he disagrees. He smiles when he's furious, and he shrinks himself down to whatever size is required to ensure that no one around him becomes uncomfortable or displeased. The psychological cost of this is immense. A life spent monitoring other people's emotional states, anticipating their needs, and suppressing your own authentic responses is an exhausting way to exist, and over time it produces a man who has become so expert at reading everyone around him and so completely disconnected from himself that he genuinely doesn't know what he wants, what he feels, or who he is when no one is watching. 4. The hidden manipulation. This is the part most people resist hearing, including nice guys themselves, so it needs to be said with precision. The nice guy's behavior, despite its appearance, is a form of manipulation, not conscious manipulation, not the cold, calculating kind, but manipulation nonetheless, because it is behavior designed to produce a specific outcome in another person without their knowledge or consent. When he agrees with everything you say, he is not being open-minded, he is removing friction so you will like him. When he does favors without being asked, he is not being generous, he is building obligation. When he avoids conflict at all costs, he is not being mature, he is engineering a relationship where the other person has no reason to leave. Every act of niceness carries a hidden agenda, and the agenda is the same in every case. Keep me safe, keep me loved, keep me approved of. What makes this psychologically fascinating rather than simply cynical is that he doesn't know he's doing it. The manipulation is unconscious, born from fear rather than malice. He is not trying to deceive anyone. He is trying to survive using the only tools his psychology gave him. But the impact on the people around him is real regardless of the intention, because there is nothing more disorienting than discovering that the person you believed was simply kind was quietly keeping score the entire time. 5. The anger beneath the smile. Of all the things hidden inside the nice guy, the one that surprises people most is the anger. Because he is so consistently pleasant, so reliably accommodating, so apparently unbothered by everything, the discovery of what lies beneath that surface can feel like stepping onto solid ground and finding it hollow. The anger is there because it has to be. Every suppressed need produces it. Every no that became a yes generates it. Every time he swallowed his authentic reaction and replaced it with a smile, the emotional energy of that authentic reaction didn't disappear. It went underground, accumulating in the places inside him he is most careful to keep hidden. The nice guy's inner world is not as peaceful as his exterior suggests. It is, in many cases, seething. This suppressed anger expresses itself in ways that are difficult to connect back to their source. Passive aggression, subtle sabotage, sarcasm dressed as humor, promises that are quietly not kept, help that is offered and then not fully delivered. It comes out sideways because he was never given and never gave himself permission for it to come out directly. And this is perhaps the deepest wound of all, a man who has become so afraid of his own emotions that he cannot access his anger when it would be healthy and appropriate, but cannot stop it from leaking out in forms that are far more corrosive than honest confrontation ever would have been. 6. The difference between kindness and people-pleasing. It is worth drawing this distinction clearly because they can look identical from the outside while being psychologically opposite on the inside. Genuine kindness is an act that originates from abundance, from a person who is secure enough in themselves to give without needing anything in return, whose generosity costs them something but does not threaten them, whose kindness is conditional on what it returns, even if that conditionality is invisible even to themselves. The genuinely kind person can say no and remain at peace. The people pleaser says yes and resents it, or says no and is consumed with guilt. There is no neutral ground, no act of giving that is simply given, because every interaction is secretly load-bearing, holding up the entire architecture of his sense of safety and worth. The tragedy is that the people pleaser often produces less genuine connection than the truly kind person, because people can sense, even when they cannot name, the invisible weight of an interaction. They feel the invisible weight of obligation. They sense that the niceness, however real it seems, has conditions. And rather than drawing people closer, it eventually pushes them away, which is precisely the opposite of everything it was designed to do.
7. Why nice guys finish last, and why? The phrase is a cultural cliché, but the psychological reality behind it is precise and worth understanding. Nice guys do not finish last because the world is cruel or because people secretly prefer to be treated badly. They finish last because the psychology of the nice guy, the approval-seeking, the conflict avoidance, the suppressed self, the covert contracts, produces a version of a person that is, paradoxically, very difficult to respect or deeply connect with. Respect requires knowing who someone is. It requires being able to predict how they will respond, what they stand for, where their limits are. A man with no visible limits, no apparent preferences, no willingness to disagree or disappoint, a man who seems to have no interior life that inconveniences anyone, is not someone people can locate, and people cannot respect, trust, or love someone they cannot find. In romantic relationships specifically, the nice guy's strategy tends to produce the exact outcome he fears most. His excessive agreeableness reads not as warmth, but as absence. His inability to establish boundaries signals not safety, but instability. His constant giving creates not gratitude, but discomfort, because healthy people sense the invisible debt accumulating and begin to feel a guilt they cannot explain. He is so focused on being what he thinks the other person wants that he forgets to be anyone at all, and ultimately you cannot build a relationship with a mirror. 8. The way out. The nice guy's psychology is not a life sentence. It is a learned pattern, which means it can be unlearned, but only through a process that is, by its nature, deeply uncomfortable for someone whose entire system is built around avoiding discomfort. The first step is the most disorienting, recognizing that his niceness, however genuine it feels, has been serving him rather than others. Not because he is a bad person, but because no one is capable of giving without any expectation of return, and the belief that he has been doing exactly that is itself part of the pattern. Every covert contract he has ever made was a way of getting needs met without the terrifying vulnerability of stating those needs directly. The work begins with learning to do what he has avoided his whole life, ask for what he actually wants. The second step is learning to tolerate the discomfort of other people's disappointment. For someone whose psychological architecture was built on the premise that disapproval is dangerous, saying no for the first time and watching someone be unhappy about it and surviving that unhappiness intact is genuinely transformative. It is the lived experience of discovering that his fear was larger than the actual threat. And the deepest shift of all is learning that his authentic self, the one with needs and limits and anger and inconvenient opinions, is not less lovable than the managed, accommodating version he has been presenting. It is more lovable because it is real, and realness is the only foundation on which anything that lasts can actually be built. The nice guy does not need to become harder or colder or more selfish. He needs to become more honest with others and, above all, with himself. Because the cruelest thing about his psychology is that he spent his entire life trying to be loved by becoming someone he isn't, when the person he actually is was always worth loving. You are deeper than you know.